So, I will be discussing the theme of death and grief in Alison Bechdel's Fun Home. So, to the main character Alison, death is just another regular thing in the world. Working at a funeral home from such a young age caused her to become nearly numb to the idea of death, and it became impossible for her to grieve the death of her own father after a tragic accident. And there are a couple of hints throughout the book that points to why this may be. So, from a young age, Alison and her family helped out their grandma by working at her funeral home, which they dubbed Fun Home, hence the name of the book. But there was one particular event that stood out at the Fun Home that left a big impact on Alison's life. If you have your book at home, the scene starts on page 43 and goes till page 45. But I'll show it right here too. So the main image I want you to focus on is this one right there. Pretty graphic, right? Yeah. So it's important to know that this is not the first time Alison saw a dead body. We know this because a few pages earlier, there's an image of her looking at her dead grandpa at the Fun Home. But this was the first time she sees the cadaver having work actually done to it. So when she walks in, she's first surprised by the dead man's genitals and giant liver in his body, as any normal person would be. She does acknowledge it was shocking to walk into the room with such a graphic scene, but decides to show no emotion. Now, Alison first thinks it's a test set up by her father to see how she reacts to the cadaver and assumes that he has no feeling of grief when looking at the man. So, she decides to imitate her dad, and that's how she ends up treating death the rest of her life, with no emotion. Now, while Fun Home certainly isn't a happy book, you could probably count the number of times Alison smiles in the comic on one hand. She just doesn't portray herself doing it that often. But there are a few obvious times when she does smile. The first is on page 46, right after the scene I was talking about. Also, so down here, also up here, page 47. So after she hears about her father's supposed suicide, her and her girlfriend head to Alison's old house where she meets up with her family. She gets out of the car, and when she sees her brother, they look at each other, and this is the first time seeing each other after their father's death, and they both have uncontrollable grins on their faces. It's strange to be smiling that much after your father's death. Now, the other major time is way later in the book on page 227. Right, this whole scene right here. Now, in this scene, she's casually talking to someone about their summer, and not only does she first forget to mention that her dad died, but the person she's talking with thinks Alison is joking because she won't stop laughing about it. Kinda sick. But there's an important line of text on this page at the very top that says, quote, "They say grief takes many forms, including the absence of grief." Now, Alison says throughout the book that when she talks about the death of her dad, it's just in a matter-of-fact tone, as if it's another object of conversation. But she does this because she wants to see if the listener would flinch at her lack of grief. She gets the grief through other people. Now, because of her dad exposing her to a naked, cut-open, dead body at such a young age in a casual manner, Alison never truly learned how to feel and deal with grief. Death just became another part of daily life to her. It became impossible for her to show any emotion towards it. Rather than mourning over her father, she's seen at different parts of the book smiling and laughing at his death because it's just ridiculous to her. She can't even show grief for her own father. But in the end, she acknowledges that maybe not showing grief is a sign of grief after all. Thank you.